Okay, I think we're live for a casual Friday. I'm sure everyone's not at their computers looking at their net worth disappear and instead attending to all their pre-planned social functions, just like we are, Duck, Nothing keeping us here.
Yep. I
Yeah, let
mean,
us know if the stuff is working and then we'll get into it.
looks like it's working to me,
Okay. Also, why
but
is Bitcoin down more than Dogecoin? There are just questions I
is
don't
it?
want answers to?
Oh shit, it is.
Do
Yeah.
you know what I mean?
I mean, Dogecoin mega nuked, but it's recovered a little bit.
Yeah. Um, Good to hear you both. Okay, I'm going to assume that's an audio endorsement. So yeah, before we start, go download the FTX app, the one without all the structured products, leverage, weird stuff. It's formerly Blockfolio. You can track your portfolio, hide your portfolio, which is good on days like this, and get your family members to FOMO into shitcoins. So probably the best, almost certainly the best mobile app on the market for crypto. Go get it, support us, and support them because they support us. That's the FTX app. I think you can still go to blockfolio.com and NFT integration. You can stake and lend your stuff. All of it's coming and most of it is there. So go check them out. They're really good to us and make this show possible because God knows we'd be way too lazy to do this otherwise. Yeah. Okay, before we get into market technical stuff, I really feel like we should lobby for two coins to be delisted. Litecoin and zcash. Like, those coins just have to fucking go. Whatever value they add to their holders or new people who buy them for a bit of a spin, the net negative impact that those two fucking coins have on this market is a bomb. Like, it's, indefensible what those coins do to the market. So I don't care how heavy your bags are, how early you are. Maybe you believe that Litecoin is like some fucking test layer for Bitcoin. It doesn't matter. Get rid of those two coins and we get rid of this type of price action. Fuck.
I mean, I can't disagree.
I'm
It's
sorry, like
something.
one of my favorite people in the space, one of my closest friends and confidants, Ledger. I adore the man, right? But when he was on Up Only, long like a lot of Zek, and he's there counting how many multiples he would make when it jumps like 30 spots on CoinMarketCap. It's like, what the fuck are you doing? It's like, how is that a real thing that you, as a serious man, an experienced practitioner in this market, the so-called Prometheus of the plebs, are measuring your future net worth in fucking Zcash market cap multiples? That's insane. You can't do that. You can't do that and get away with it.
Yeah, Ledger cursed us all. Everyone that bought Zcash, to be fair, fucking hell, every single time. I mean, I do agree. It's been a meme, and I mean, it's been right most of the time, but people have just been taking it as a meme. But I mean, there's more to it than that. Because every time, like legitimately every time, it does happen.
Unreal. Also, Spell has basically completed its magic trick, as I'm sure you've seen. No fucking refunds from Disney on this one. Full retrace, even trading below its sort of listing low, at least
Oh,
in
can you do that on the
FTX.
4 hour?
Sorry, what's that?
On the 4 hour, can you show that on the 4 hour?
Yeah, sure. There you go. For my next trick, I will take all your money.
That's the Disney castle, yeah.
Yeah, for sure. But you have to realize, like, the market enters these regimes where it's like fork mania, and a lot of essentially like insiders, but also some newer entrants, momentum traders, etc. They just make money fork to fork to fork, etc. But when the premise, like the core premise itself, is no longer a main narrative in the market, these things fucking die. So there's a lot of controversy specifically around Spell and how, there was like a VC-esque element to it, early funding, and people knew the fucking, details of the contract that weren't available to the public, etc. I'm not going to relitigate all of that. But if that kind of stuff with that sort of imbued asymmetry breaks trend and you hold on to it, you're asking for a fucking, right?
Mm. Yeah, I mean, 100%. I'm not really like, I haven't been up to date with that coin,
Yeah.
other than the fact that it just looked hideous. And yeah, I mean, it looked hideous for a reason, I guess.
I
Jesus
guess.
Christ.
So yeah, that's rough. Just some stuff. You know what? Before we get to the serious stuff, we might as well get the. I watched one of these shows, and this first section of their podcast is called Petty Grievances, where they just like grieve out, or, you know, air their grievances for annoying shit or stuff that's funny or ranty stuff, and then it gets to the substantive part, right? I kind of want to adopt that. So just one final thing from me, and I swear we'll move on to something serious. Cameron Winklevoss's Twitter account is one of the worst fucking things that I've ever seen, right? And I know I didn't run this past you, probably nuked a Gemini sponsorship, whatever, but like this account is truly, truly cursed. I don't know if you've ever read his tweets, but it gives me like existential dread whenever this man tweets. So, for example, 48 minutes ago, it's been great to see Zcash mooning the past few weeks. This is still the most underrated project in crypto. Privacy is a human right. Okay? That's sort of a self-explanatory, right?
Yep.
Also, then, what's your favorite holiday movie? Mine is Bitcoin Actually. I think that's a Love Actually joke, but calling it a joke is just far too generous, given, you know, the comedy content involved. Again, here, replying to Elizabeth Warren, no, it's because you keep spending money you don't have and printing money out of thin air. Nice try. I mean, we know that got 8k likes, even though we know it's not accurate. The US government issues its own currency. It doesn't need to collect taxes before spending money into existence. It's not a household, right? That's not the correct order of operations, but whatever, who cares about the truth? There were some other completely terrible ones. Just opened up an account at Wales Fargo. For fuck's sake, man. Like, is there an intern just like whispering this shit into his ear? And then this absolutely took the fucking biscuit. The dollar store is raising prices 25%. The vast majority of goods they sell will be priced at $1.25 starting in 2022. If you use the dollar store as a proxy for inflation rather than use the consumer price index, can we just, and then he puts a comma, like what should have followed that is, you are a fucking idiot, right? But instead what followed is, inflation is closer to 25% than the widely reported 6%. Ouch. So first of all, that premise itself is fucking absurd. Like this section here, if you use the dollar store as a proxy for inflation rather than the CPI, he could have saved the tweet there and said, you know, something's wrong with your brain, consult a neurosurgeon, whatever. But instead, inflation is closer to 25% than widely reported 6%. Ouch. And then Joe completely obliterates him. Massive ratio. So do you acknowledge, therefore, that inflation was 0% since 1986? Mate, fucking destroyed. You know, delete your account at that point. Anyway, you know, I read this tweet, which is like, it's really difficult to make people look worse after that movie about Facebook, the social network or whatever, but somehow their careers post-Facebook have managed to do that all on their own. So fuck, yeah, that's just something I wanted to bring up because it's just not good enough. It's just not good enough.
No, I mean, I followed those guys when I started my Twitter account at the start, and I was like, holy shit, how can anyone listen to this garbage? Like, I think I've unfollowed the guy like 3 years ago or something.
Yeah.
Because it's just, like, it's impossible to read that without, like, completely cringing off the face of the earth. It's, like, so bad. Yeah. But, I mean, that's, like, the worst part about, like, the big Bitcoin/crypto accounts. They, like, post this garbage, right? And it gets so much interaction. And I'm not surprised people don't take crypto seriously when they, like... when this is basically the type of quality that they see from people, right? Like, because it's not like a tweet from someone in our bubble that gets like to the normies. It's like garbage shit like this, where everyone with like a brain can actually see that it's just complete bullshit. So I'm not surprised that like the few of others on the space or about the space is like super fucking bad, because we just look like morons if these are the kind of people that have the reach that they have.
Yeah. It's who, you know, the people we give a megaphone to, essentially, is a indictment on ourselves. But there is good news among all of this, Duck. News you'll be delighted to hear. Floor model, this is from Plan B, of course. Floor model 98k November close will probably be a first miss after nailing August, September, October. Stock to flow model, not affected, and indeed on track towards 100k. So if you were worried, you know, about the floor model missing, stock to flow is still intact towards 100k. So you can go to sleep without the cold sweats now, knowing that Math Man, you know, the quant god, and his ineffable models are pointing towards 100k. So everything's going to be okay, you know?
I mean, and if that doesn't work, we're just going to do like the stock free flow, stock for flow. I mean, we can do this all night. Basically.
There's a floor model, a ceiling model, a wall model, a fucking
house
chair model. Yeah, the lawn model. You know, fucking more models than Gainsey at 11 on a weekend. You know, fucking hell. I don't know. Just Twitter's been a lot. Recently. So yeah,
let's just look at the interaction.
I know it's. I mean, look, good old Will. You know, I love Will. I've got a lot of time for Will, especially for, you know, as far as on-chain goes. He says the comments saying the amount of people that lost money because of this, etc., are absurd. If your prediction was correct, they take responsibility. Because it wasn't, they blame you. Newsflash, people, you're responsible for your own decisions. 8,000 likes, and then they kind of circle jerk each other and get 8,000 likes apiece. I mean, it's fucking hell, man. Yeah, I mean, if you're approaching this in good faith. Thing is, you don't even know how his fucking floor model is calculated, essentially, right? Like, there's no methodology for it to criticize, as far as I'm aware. If I read Eric's tweets correctly, for being so sort of pro blockchain, open source, etc. Of course, the model isn't, you know, shared or transparent with the community to be criticized. So you basically have this Goliath with a ton of followers, who tells you that Bitcoin's going to go up like a lot, and that's it. Those are the voices we amplify. Now, I'm comfortable making like an argument that Plan B is possibly a net positive for Bitcoin/crypto, because if you're dumb enough to buy what he's selling, the chances that you hold are generally higher, right? So if you're going to be a massive, like, whatever, bad word in the market and like panic sell at every opportunity, etc., but you gain this conviction because you think it's like mathematically proven that Bitcoin's going to 100k, a million, a zillion, etc. Maybe if his reach is big enough, you can make an argument that he's a net positive to the crypto space because he gets people to hold and gives them that conviction they wouldn't have themselves. But the fucking intellectual cost that we pay for that is a lot. Yes. Man.
I'm still convinced whenever the next bear market is going to hit, his followers are the guys that are going to sell the bottom. Because if you're convinced that like this is all mathematically proven that we're going to go up, and then it goes down much, much further, and his models, I mean, some of them have already failed, but I mean, no matter like how many he's going to kind of make up, at some point people are like going to be like, okay, what the fuck? This just isn't accurate anymore. And then if all you believe, like if you're only kind of like hanging on because these garbage models tell you to, you're going to be panicking the moment they fail. Yes. And so, yeah, I still think that's going to be the case at some point. I mean, the good thing for him is that in general, crypto tends to go up, right? Yes. So it's like, it's really hard for him to be wrong, because what he's basically saying is crypto is going to go up, right? And that's like everyone in this space, right? If you're not in this, like if you're in the space and you like don't think that in general, then I mean, you're probably in the wrong space in general, right? So it's like, he's just like parroting pretty much what everyone else is saying, but like makes up bullshit numbers to support it. And people just believe numbers because, I mean, numbers are magic basically in the minds of a lot of people that don't really use them day to day. And then it doesn't really matter how he got to those numbers. It's just the fact that he says it with a lot of confidence, in my opinion anyway.
Right. Yeah, that's like mathematical, you know, proof, or, you know, when you're speculating, you're like, look, this is a bet, right? And like, there are certain variables which I'm looking at right now that make this a probabilistic outcome I'm willing to risk money on. But when you get into the on-chain, stock to flow, etc. stuff, it's almost presented as fucking science and as fact, you know, and sort of much more serious, even though it's just as speculative as the other stuff.
Yep.
Also, someone says, what happened to Plan A? Well, I mean, I think he's so close to aborting his models that he had to call himself Plan B. Wink. Anyway, yeah, that's most of the stuff that I've got. I think I had another point, but I've honestly forgotten it, and that's probably for the better. Oh no, here it is.
Okay.
People think this thing, like of just being a mega bullish, whatever model, etc., is something new, and like Plan B is special in that regard. Perhaps his specific model is. Motherfucker, I grew up with Parabolic Trav. You remember that guy? Do you remember fucking Parabolic Trav, the personal trainer? I mean, the crypto quant Bitcoin legend, right? What the fuck happened to him? Bear market came, the dude disappeared for 2 years, right? Parabolic Trav, he was the extreme version of Plan B, for fuck's sake, if you can imagine such a thing. Market disappeared, and so did he. And then miraculously, when everything looked better, and after he probably sold the bottom or did whatever, right? He's back, and here he is. So that's what you can expect from, not Plan B necessarily. I'm just saying this isn't new, right? When you get a dude using sort of, you know, hand wavy sleight of hand methods to tell you that crypto is going to go up and make themselves look very intelligent and special, and then when the market doesn't do that, either there's a new model or they fucking disappear. This isn't the first time we've seen this.
Yes. Good times. He was hilarious.
He was fucking great. I love Trav. He was great. You know, he served a specific purpose in that market. But yeah, fuck. I should probably shut up. Do you want to talk about the chart?
Sure. Yeah.
I need to get my heart rate down or something, man.
Should I share?
Yeah, sure.
Let me see.
Also, like the video if you want more petty grievances at the start of every stream. God knows we have a lot of them.
Yeah, so like I streamed just 2 days ago and I was like, okay, sell into basically 60K. I didn't quite get it, but I got it close enough that I'm like not as hurt by this drop than I could have been. But yeah, basically what happened is we broke through the all-time high, right, that we set like back in March. So we set an all-time high in March, broke that to the upside, and now we kind of lost it again and retested 60K as in the all-time high, the previous one, and just fucked off, right? This looks really fucking bad now, in my opinion. I'm pretty damn glad that I got rid of most of my Bitcoin. That said, we're closing in on the first support, right? And like I talked about in my last stream, I could see like a sizable bounce there. So that's kind of what I'm hoping for. And I'm not entirely sure if we're gonna go like best case scenario, I think would be like sideways in here, and then the altcoins can do whatever the fuck they want to, right? Worst case is obviously just losing that support, and then you start looking really shit because there's no real support below there. For me anyway, so I would have to see strength to get back into the market, which would be basically reclaiming supports that we've lost, as in like 60K. Like let's say this rolls, like kind of puts in a bottom, kind of shakes off the S&P weakness, the COVID fears again, and then starts walking up. I think above 60K, it's pretty free, in the sense that we are, I think, gonna go to at least 70. So that's going to be a nice trade. Or if we completely shit the bed, I think any kind of support that we wipe out and then reclaim is going to be a somewhat okay bet. Still scary, but fine. So in this case, for example, 51K, we lose that, go sideways below there, and then start creeping back up again.
Nice.
I'll probably take a shot at that as well. The only support that I wouldn't really want to do that with would be like low 40Ks, because that area is terrifying to me. I don't want to deal with it. So yeah, it's basically like if you want to be aggressive, I think 51-ish is like a good bet on a reclaim if like we start crashing. Wick wise, and this is something that we've talked about in the past. The problem is like with buying wicks at like 51, 52 is that we're so close and consolidating that it doesn't really make much sense to kind of buy wicks there, because the liquidations would have to be tiny for that to like wick there and then come back up.
Yes.
So like if anything, if you want to be buying liquidations, I think you buy them like at 47-ish.
Thank God, because I was going to make that argument, yeah.
So yeah, basically down here.
Yes.
Because I think there's a good chance that 51K holds on a closing basis if we go there. But I mean,
you get some brown pants in the process.
And you get wicks basically. Yeah. So maybe next week, like maybe we close this week somewhere in the area that we are right now, and then next week we spike down towards 46, and then either like start coming back up again, which would be nice, or kind of go completely to shit. I'm not entirely sure yet. For my ETH backs, I'm hoping that it's gonna be up, but yeah, it looks pretty shit to me right now. Okay. That's kind of my view. And then on the daily time frame, I mean,
yeah, that's
a tough retest that we had yesterday. It's kind of funny. Like the COVID stuff came out and nothing really happened for a while. And then the market closed at resistance and completely took
the
shit.
S&P started really getting pounded as well.
Yeah.
So it makes sense.
But it took a while. It took both
it
markets
wasn't
a while.
immediate. Yeah, for sure. It's kind of like the first one, right? The first one didn't like disappear immediately when that news came out, whatever, in 2020. Time has been weird. You know, that took a while to digest. And then
I still remember, like back then, I talked with like a bunch of people, even like with bigger funds and stuff, and they were like, okay, it's already moved, right? This was back in here. So basically, what happened with the COVID stuff back then was like, we all knew about COVID, right? In our crypto bubble.
Yes.
And then we got this moved down, and I talked with a bunch of people. Like I said, even with funds, and they were like, okay, we've already missed the COVID move.
Right.
And then the COVID move came in, right? So sometimes, like, if you feel like you've missed something, it just takes a while to catch on. I don't think we're in the same situation as back then. So I don't want to fearmonger. Like, I don't think we're just going to disappear towards like 20K. I don't really see that as a valid argument. But it still looks, chart-wise, still looks completely.
Yeah, that crash was just like, for global markets, was such a massive outlier, right? In every sense. I think expecting a pure repeat based on like headlines or price patterns, etc., it's kind of asking for a lot. I mean, obviously, if any market was going to do it, it would be crypto. Yeah. But it's a tall order. One thing I'll mention before I kind of summarize my technical view, which is very similar, is that you have to be aware of how narratives are shifting and not to get fucked by them. Because you have to realize the first narrative was the all-time high break would send us to like 100K or whatever, which was a totally reasonable one at the time as a momentum continuation trade based on how prices behaved historically through all-time highs. That didn't happen. Then as the market was floating, it was like, well, we're just being impatient and the market is taking its time and money needs to just rotate to Bitcoin. You know, once it actually breaks out, that's when the all-time high break will look real. Then it didn't happen. Then the market floated down to 60 and the argument was that's a range high retest. And that's completely fine. You know, technicals look fine, yada, yada. Now that the range high retest is failing, it's like, well, yeah, you can make a lower high at around 50. It's like, listen, by the time one of those is fucking correct, the market's down 50% and you've lost all the money you've made over the last 2 months, right? Like, you need to be pretty nimble with these things. And as soon as those compelling, quote unquote, compelling arguments start getting knocked over back to back to back or whatever, maybe something has changed, right? Maybe something has changed. That's just worth bearing in mind that, like, just narratives in the market themselves like move so quickly. You need to stay on top of this shit, and for every narrative to have like an invalidation. Like, do you remember a coin called AVAX? I've completely fucking forgotten about it now over the course of a day because now everyone's looking at S&P, dollar, and this new variant thing, right? Do you remember NFTs? I've never heard of NFTs in my life, right? So you just got to stay nimble with this shit is one thing I want to mention. I think you did a great job with the technicals, unsurprisingly. I was basically fudding and being bearish on my Monday stream, so haha, age well, tap on the back, useless influencer shit. I think 2 trades are attractive to me based on higher time frames. One is reclaiming convincingly, I mean like proper type of reclaim through this weekly cluster at 61K, as we discussed. Whenever/wherever that may form, especially if it's like in the midterm or whatever, that's a real nasty level because it's that cluster, took us to all-time high, then failed. That's the most pivotal, or one of the most pivotal resistance levels, I think, that's in the chart. And just by eyeballing it, you can see that it roughly lines up with the former range high here, no matter how you want to draw it. So in any case, if you get back above 61K, you have that cluster being reclaimed, but in general, you can be a bit more confident that the range high is now support and not resistance, right? The other trade I'm interested in is, or would be, buying very discounted liquidations under 50K, ideally a wick as possible. And the level that I've got for that is literally the box you pointed out here at around 46s. Again, it can wick lower, 42, 46, whatever, but that type of area, this little consolidation before we started to move up only, that's a real area, at least, you know, broadly, to start fishing if you're gonna gun for that type of setup. So essentially, You know, I'm not interested in shorting this kind of stuff because whatever, I don't think the trade is there for me personally unless something really nice sets up or it's intraday. But you know, this is essentially a weekly live stream. It takes a lot more management for shorts than longs, and you know, whatever. There are a ton of reasons not to have strong views about that. I personally don't even like shorting. I'll just rotate into stable coins and stuff. Generally, if I want to risk off. But yeah, in terms of the long stuff, it would either have to be a 61k reclaim, and it probably wouldn't give you a nice retest like that, or fishing for liquidation-driven wicks/discounts, ideally on the bottom part of this weekly cluster, which is below 50k and sort of in the mid 40s. And again, when I say fishing for discounts, liquidations, etc., I mean that's the type of price where it trades there and it never goes back, right? Like that is definitively the extreme. No sweeps, no nothing. I mean something, you know, really stand out on the chart would need to take place there. So those are kind of the two long side trades that I find interesting. I agree that structurally closing or reclaiming this kind of 50k area would look pretty good, but in any case we end up agreeing because if it's going to bottom there, it likely comes with a wick in the mid 40s anyway, right?
Yep.
One thing I'm looking out for is that I'm just going to bring up here the annualized basis for Bitcoin. So this is quarterly futures basis just annualized. It's down to 8-9%. That's really low. And if the market keeps shitting, I don't know what you think about this, Duck. I think we'll see backwardated quarterlies. And that's historically, at least when you're coming off of a steep premium, that tends to be an awesome like bottom, at least short-term bottom/mean reversion signal when quarterly futures trade below the index or spot price or whatever. So you can imagine a scenario where you've got this, you know, liquidations below 50k/psychological number. You've got weekly structure in the mid 40s. Market gets hammered. You get some proper liquidations for once and backwardated futures into that type of level. That's about as much as you can ask for a mean reversion setup, right?
Agreed. Yeah, that'd be one of the setups, the few ones that I would happily buy.
Yes.
With the market looking like this,
even if it's like a quick trade from like 44 to 50, whatever, 51, 52, that's a good trade, and that'll happen in like 3 candlesticks or something at that point, you know. That's a fast moving tape. Yeah, it's like a 10-minute trade for sure.
Yeah, I mean, honestly, like the kind of like the narrative is kind of shitty for like any long trades, in my opinion, given that we're just back below all-time high. Like that's like, for me, basically what happened is we had a range, we ranged in that range, we broke the high, and now we're back below in the range. This is one of my favorite long setups when it's inverse, right? Like
yes,
you take this and then you long it. These kind of plays usually play out like on both sides of the market, right? So given that we're back inside the range, good chance that we actually just break it to the downside. And in this case, where's the range low? That's like pretty damn tough to say, but it's like in the 30s. And that kind of sucks, right? Because if this is the overthrow and this is the range in general, then that would mean we go in here, go sideways, go back up again. That would suck for any position in crypto. I'm not quite that bearish, but like my system, like if this was back 2018 when I was still aggressively shorting, trying to squeeze out every last drop of the bear market that I could get, that's kind of where I would be gunning, right? If I was like a bear tart basically right now, I'd put my stop loss above the highs and then target the lows, basically 30k. That's like still, even though we've dropped the shitload, still an attractive trade. Like I said, I'm not gonna take it, and I'm still actually long positioned, or like not long, but like spot in ETH. So I hope that doesn't play out, but it does kind of like, it's the high time frame trade that I can see, other than the liquidation trade, which I think you can actually have both. I think you can liquidate people into 46 bounce and then still look shit.
Yes, you can.
So yeah, the next trade I think is gonna be one that is gonna be buying liquidations, but in general, like this just is not a chart that I actually like looking at, even more so when I'm in the market. So yeah, just a fair warning on that front. And I'd be more than happy to be kind of proven wrong on that, because it's pretty damn easy to prove me wrong too, right? Go above 60K. I think it's the best invalidation that you can have on any kind of bear hardness that you have, because if it goes back above 60K, I think there's no room for being bearish anymore.
Yeah, that sounds pretty reasonable. So yeah, if you're knife catching, TLDR, you're either buying a reclaim / strength through 60, given you've got the confluence of this recent cluster and the former range high. And by you, I just mean we, or the stream, or what we think is plus EV, etc. You can do whatever the fuck you want, right? But in general, what makes sense to us is strength above 60, because that's weekly cluster, and in any case, the range high is likely to be support again rather than resistance. Or if you're willing to knife catch this, then you at least want the futures market on your side and a lot of forced selling and some sort of cushion, right? That some sort of low has been put in, and that typically comes in the form of outsized liquidations and or backwardated futures. And the caveat to the second trade, which is the knife catch one, is that that's something you hold for a day or two, right? Like if you're properly fishing for wicks and catching it, you close that, you punt that with that's quite a rare setup, so your sizing should reflect that, but you get out in the first trouble area, which might be around 50K. But your position size in general, at least for me, my framework, it kind of more than makes up for the relatively small move. And to the third leg to that, I agree with Duck on a swing basis. If this is a kind of range high, failed breakout, yada yada, your real candidates for a range low, I mean, you have to look at these lows in this consolidation, and it's just not very nice. So it's almost better to focus on the trades within the more recent range, which is that the nearest high time frame support, which would be a good cushion for all those liquidations, etc., is below 50K. And if you're more of a continuation by strength type of thing, 60 plus is much more attractive. For me personally, at least on a weekly time frame, this is a bit in no man's land where the market is right now. The closest kind of cope type of setup I can find is actually the daily range low. It's a bit of a tentative one. You probably don't like it, Duck, but it's this daily range low from the lowest close before the run up at around, what is that, 54K, and that's been tagged, and I think the low has been tagged as well. If it hasn't, then that's bad. Oh, for fuck's sake. Okay. In any case, this 54K, in terms of immediate price action, I think there is some structure at 54K by virtue of being the bottom of this daily range low. I'd kind of expect it to get spiked at the very least, but it's not, there isn't enough high time frame stuff for me here to punt it with any conviction. The conviction trades are the ones we pointed out. One final note I'll make on Bitcoin technicals. One thing I've learned is that this market really likes moving average memes. I call them MAMs. And if I just bring up a few of them, so 50 weekly, that one's fucked. Let's get rid of that one because it's been broken. Here we go. So I've got the 21 weekly, the 50 weekly, and the 200 daily. There's a shit ton of confluence between, essentially 50K and 46K, right? This shit is kind of aligned. So even if you have a bounce which takes us to death and it's a bear trend, etc., etc., if there's going to be any sort of bounce, which I expect, should the market trade lower, which it may, I would just keep an eye on a lot of this shit being lined up in the mid-40s. Now, again, expecting it to wick through, etc., all of that type of stuff is totally reasonable, but just in terms of stuff to have on your radar, you're going to have a lot of trend following high time frame punters with deep pockets looking for at least a bounce, even if it is literally, from, let's say, this or slightly below this MA level at 45K to this range high level at 52K. I expect this to, if there's going to be a wick anywhere, this is quite attractive, at least for a short-term trade into the range high. So I'm not, these don't feature in my system per se, but I like to keep a track of where they are, just to know where the high time frame, mean reversion, trend following, whatever bids are going to be coming in, and it's pretty stacked in the mid-40s. So if you can get discounts there or liquidation driven moves, whatever, backwardated futures, there's very likely a nice short-term trade to be had there if it sets up appropriately, and it's confluenced all the technical shit anyway. What do you think of that?
Yeah, I like it a lot. Someone in the chat asked what exactly a range low would be.
Go on.
And I think this entire range, there's a big one in here.
Yes.
I can actually make this on a prettier chart. You have this big range, right? This is basically this. And I mean, it's pretty easy to see that that's the range because, I mean, that's just kind of been the entire area where we've been going sideways in.
And the
right?
mid range is like 44, 46-ish, right? Like roughly eye
Yeah.
testing it, yeah.
And if you want to like draw in like a mid range, or like even you could say like this is a lower range ish here, and this is a higher range, however you want to call it, right? I'm fine with like saying, okay, this is a range and this is a range as well, and this entire thing is a range, right? So you have like a macro range basically, which is the big thing,
30 to 60 basically, right?
Yeah, 30 to 60, and then you have like a smaller range from basically 40 to 60.
Yeah.
So yeah, there's like, you can draw these in different ways. In general, what we've done is basically we've deviated above the macro range. So my trading kind of says we're gonna deviate below the macro range. Now, you could also argue, and I'd be more than happy if that happened, that given we kind of deviated above this micro range here, we're just gonna go back below, like, or like in the area of 40, like deviate below there, and then head back up. I'm down with that. I'd much rather see that than the lower one, because the lower one gets this shit. This is just so low that it feels it feels so bad even talking about it. And people, like everyone that's gonna see this is gonna be like, okay, what the fuck?
Yeah.
And I do kind of agree with that. It's like, it's way too low. So I'm down with like 40, like the lower one, at the higher one as well. It's just, I'll take it level by level. And right now my levels are basically saying, okay, we have resistance again. We're not in up only mode, and we've kind of wicked or like traded in an area that should have had continuation and didn't lead to anything. And that's always a bad sign.
What do you think of the people calling for sub 10k BTC, either wick or short term? Mate, unless you're on fucking Kraken.
I was just about to say that. Finance on like whatever euro pair or something that no one trades, or Kraken is the only way.
Yeah.
Short term. The dude says 10k short term.
10k short term. I'll need a short rope if that's the case.
Yeah, that's way too insane. Even if it's gonna happen, right? Like, I've seen so many bears kind of call for low targets, right? And sometimes they play out, right? I've seen bears call for 3k at 10k. The thing is, you have that target, right? And it trades and it kind of does whatever, like what every kind of thing does that is tradable, which is it doesn't go from like where you think it's gonna go down to like it doesn't do this, where it's just like from the starting point to the end point in a straight line, but it actually bounces a shitload. And what happens is you short 10k, it goes down and it goes back to 10k. You close your short because you're like, holy shit. And then it goes back down. You're like, ha. And then you open your short again because, oh, you're right. And then it bounces. Like, it doesn't really help you to kind of have these low targets, because even if you're right, there's a very, very high chance that you're either going to have been grown tired of the trade. Like, it's really tough, like holding a trade for like even more so the short trade for like half a year. That takes a toll on you. And you're probably gonna like regret it anyway, because you could have just traded it level to level, made more, at least on the short side. On the long side, I think holding these kind of trades is a good kind of habit to have, or in general, like this is something that I think is gonna make you more money in the end, and is kind of gonna be involved. Like you're gonna have less stress if you're able to hold on to long trades. But if you're kind of like targeting 10k with like a short, good fucking luck. But that seems way too stupid to me.
Yeah, it's the upside that's unlimited, right? Just
basically.
And also, just one thing I discovered is, in terms of mind share, I've always just done better since I decided I'm, outside of short-term trading or whatever, I'm not interested in big macro swing shorts and whatnot. I'd rather have that mental capacity, that mental capital, to look for the best buys rather than manage a short where I should be opening a long, right? So I'd much rather have like a clear head and look to long in those areas where it makes sense to, rather than be focused on managing a short in those areas instead of buying, in my opinion, at least. I'm sure you can do both, etc. But I think if you're going to prioritize with crypto generally, yeah, that's sort of my piece there. Let's talk about ETH very quickly. So
Yes.
TLDR on BTC, 61 plus, cool. Liquidations into sub 50, something nasty, cool, at least for a short-term trade. Anything else kind of looks dog shit. So those are the two things on our radar. And as for right now, there's some daily support, etc. But this is a weekly show, so we're going to mostly talk about weekly structure. Don't make immediate decisions based on what you see here. I mean, market's been down like 12% in a day or something, you know. ETH. So I feel really vindicated on this, and you know why? When the market tested like this last week's low at 4K, everyone said that it had bounced off of support and it makes sense as a trade. It never touched my level, right? Because where my level comes from, it's actually this original swing high all the way from May. And the way I set the level up is in classic, you know, support resistance video type of fashion. Highest close. So this for me was a breakout attempt, which failed, the second swing, and then the real support was still on the close of the original high all the way at 39.30. And when the market traded into it last week, which looked like a bottom, right, sub 4K, etc., I was like, man, something makes me uneasy about this because it didn't test my level, right? And it missed, and it's quite rare that this sort of shit misses. What, you know, the reason I wasn't vocal about it is because Bitcoin Weekly did the same thing. I was expecting a retest on this former range high. Oh, fuck, does that mean that's where Bitcoin's going? Fuck off, I'm not even going to entertain that train of thought. Forget I said that. Like, that's some dog shit right there. You know what? Yeah, fuck it. Can you talk about ETH? I just stumbled on something I really don't like.
Yeah, I can. I mean, I've basically, like, I had this on this one, but I mean, I don't really care. Like, both ones I think are fine. But yeah, what I don't like about this is basically like a touch and go would have been fine. And I mean, I am someone that is still holding ETH, right? So it's not like I'm like on this agenda to make this go down. I actually wanted to go up, right? But in general, like breakouts, and I've talked about like to death about this, right? When you have a proper breakout, you don't want to retest at all. If you do have, like, that's the best and most bullish scenario. You just don't retest. The second best is you retest, but what you basically do is you wick and then go back up immediately, not giving anyone time to get in. And basically the most shitty option of a breakout is you go back to the breakout point and chill there, right? And this is basically what's happening here. It could obviously still turn around if we miraculously mega rally on the weekend, which I'm not expecting. But it's basically what this is kind of looking like right now is that we're just going to sit on top of this support. And then I think the best case would be like if you're already sitting on the support is basically a deep wick down and then a close back above it. That's the only kind of redemption arc for like the retest thing, because if this is not going to happen, like if it doesn't shake out and still going to sit on the support, what was most likely going to happen in my experience from trading this shit is that it's just going to straight up fall out of it and then win deep shit, because it's the exact same shitty setup that Bitcoin has. And if you've been listening, like that has me like pretty damn bearish. So if that happens on ETH, that's not good. And then what's the target? And here it's even clearer, right? With the ranges that you can draw, because this is like legitimately just like one range. And what's the target for that if it starts breaking down, right?
Oh, great. Thanks.
Low numbers. And that's going to suck, right? So pray to God that this holds. It can, I think, like if I don't think we're going to move much in the next 2 days. I could be completely wrong. It just completely nukes out, but I doubt that we're just going to move back up. And if it doesn't, like if we don't move, I could see it like kind of wick down next week, and that be actually like the most bullish thing that I could see in this scenario. If it does close the end of the week next week back above the breakout point. If it doesn't, I mean, I'm just going to be bearish and expecting lower. And the thing is, you might be saying, okay, this guy is completely nuts because like we're at 4K and this would be 1.7. But the thing is, we're up from $80, right? Like this thing is up from $80 all the way to 5K. If this retraces like some of it, that wouldn't actually be like on a macro kind of scale. That wouldn't be insane. That'd just be like, okay, it's a tiny retrace in the grand scheme of things. It's still I mean, if you look at it from there, it's still up 1.6K%.
Yeah, but Solana's up like 15K%, bro. You know.
Yeah, but I mean, Solana used to be a small coin. It's much easier for those.
Yeah, of course.
Yeah, but yeah, I mean, I hope we're holding this. If we don't,
haha, Duck bearish at support wrecked. You know, I'll make sure to tweet at you once there's a green candle that's visible to tell you how dumb you are.
Please do tweet at me. I don't give a shit. I'm exposed to ETH. I want this to go up.
Yeah, no, I understand. I'm sort of exposed to ETH now, disproportionately by virtue of holding WASIs. So, you know, it's definitely mistakes season on that note. So if we do a quick summary, right, for the people who want to get on with their social lives. So for BTC, above 61K, good. Catching mega licks, discounts, wicks, backwardation, sub 50, good. Brackets for a bounce. Anything below / in the interim, meh. Worst case, mid 40s butter into 30K range low, brackets LOL. I think that's what we said, essentially. Bitcoin above 61K, good. That's the weekly reclaim level. Catching mega liquidations, discounts, wicks, you know, the really absurd, outsized, high time frame moves. Backwardation, maybe that's on quarterly futures. Sub 50, probably good for a bounce. That's not a trade I would hold for ages. Just maybe wait until like spreads normalize or something. There's some, you know, tall wick and whatever, you know, derivatives getting wiped, and that's probably enough. And then anything below / in the interim, as in right now, is sort of meh. The worst case is that 60K range high, 30K range low, poke above 60, fail, move towards 30. That would suck, but, you know, why not consider the worst case scenario? After all, wasn't that long ago we saw Bitcoin at 3K, ETH at fucking $80. Absurd. ETH above 4K, good. Anything else is kinda shit. Brackets, and will depend on BTC, believe it or not. What do you think, Doug? Is that fair?
Yeah.
Also, leave a like on the video if you like these sorts of summaries, you know, feed us the dopamine and the interaction, all that type of stuff. But I think that's broadly what we've covered.
There's a guy trying to teach us how to trade in the comments. It's fucking hilarious.
No one's talking anything about shorting. Oh, isn't showing any signs of reversing. Oh, what a bum. I'm just gonna remove him from the channel. I can't be asked to argue with
Dude,
customers.
it's so hilarious to me when I talk about like having exposure to the market, but saying the market looks like shit, and then someone comes along and it's like, hey dude, you're idiots for shorting. Like, oh fucking hell.
Yeah.
Like, can you make a better bearish case than like idiots taking like just like completely.
He's also telling me to take fucking Tom's course. Jesus Christ! Like the lack of self-awareness is unreal, man.
Yeah, but I mean, I'm just enjoying. Dude, I've been growing to enjoy the stupid comments. It's getting like I'm kind of starting to get used to it.
I should WhatsApp Tom and ask him to send me his course. Anyway, yeah, that's more or less the summary from us on Bitcoin and ETH. One thing I'll note is that whenever people who argue that ETH is a leader for the market or pay attention to ETH, etc., I generally, especially if the market's bullish, I think that's a pretty good take, or at least a balanced take. You can justify that if like ETH BTC is doing well, crypto is risk on, and ETH kind of becomes the beacon for altcoin risk, etc. I think all of that is totally reasonable. When I think that becomes unreasonable is when Bitcoin has shown high time frame weakness, and then you say, oh yeah, but you know, ETH still looks fine. Or, you know, I don't know, like if Bitcoin's shown its hand and you're getting relative strength in all sorts of stuff except Bitcoin, it doesn't matter that ETH looks stronger than BTC. You've got like bigger problems at hand, right? So that's just something to bear in mind when it comes to, oh, what's leading the market, etc. The blunt version of that is every time people stop giving a shit about Bitcoin, we top, right? That's the kind of cynical one-liner version of that. But I think more generally, paying attention to ETH and ETH BTC, if the conditions are good, really makes a lot of sense. And, you know, in bull markets, ETH generally outperforms BTC as well. So there's a lot of good foundation to the idea. But after Bitcoin's shown high time frame weakness, if you're still banging the drum that, yeah, but ETH looks fine and look at alts bouncing, etc., I don't think that's as compelling.
Can you please stop flooding my bags? No, I do agree. It's actually hilarious because I was just about to say, look at ETH BTC still looks kind of fine.
Also, I'm
The thing
deleting
is,
this summary thing. Yeah, go on.
I mean, I'm gonna get shit on if Bitcoin breaks down. In my ETH position, it's just basically my ETH is just like the fact that I'm still holding ETH is basically me being in disbelief about my view on Bitcoin.
Yeah, fair enough.
And
you're counter trading yourself, right?
Yeah, basically. And I mean, the thing is, given that invalidation is so close, I don't really mind it too much.
Yeah.
And I mean, we've had like a really, really strong bull market, so I'm willing to give it like the benefit of the doubt for a little bit. But yeah, I do agree with you. Like, if Bitcoin actually starts breaking down, ETH is gonna take a tumble as well. I'm actually still surprised how well ETH BTC is doing, given the fact that Bitcoin just dumped 10% and ETH BTC is still up on the weekly. That's impressive to me. So, like, what I could see, and this is like the one anomaly, whenever like altcoins actually do well when Bitcoin starts looking real shit, and that's the end of the cycle, right? So if we're indeed at the end of the cycle, and this is like one of the main reasons why, like, besides cope, why I haven't sold my ETH yet, is that if we are at the end of the cycle, I could actually see altcoins outperform if Bitcoin just manages to hold on for like a week or 2 or 3.
Yes.
And then I'll take my exit, right? Like, if altcoins run for 3 weeks, while Bitcoin looks like this, what it's doing right now, basically.
That's your alt season formula, right?
Yeah.
And that's the argument we made in Technical Roundup for those who don't read it. I mean, shame on you. But it was essentially that if Bitcoin doesn't accelerate, everything else looks primed to send on the altcoin side of things. Now, that probably means we're fucked cycle-wise, unless there's some weird triple bubble where we have the altcoin blow off and then BTC gets rescued and, you know, some sort of unbelievable thing. But the formula for altcoins doing well is Bitcoin doesn't accelerate to the downside and sort of its arse doesn't fall out. And that allows ETH BTC continuation to play out and altcoins, etc. So that's kind of the best case as far as Bitcoin, you know, Bitcoin below 60K, how can you still do really well in this market? Well, it would be a volatility down in Bitcoin and everything else popping for some period of time, right?
Yeah, and that's been happening somewhat in sectors of crypto, right? I mean, we've seen, and I mean, AVAX has dumped. I feel really good about like I talked about AVAX last stream, basically. And I cursed it. I was like, this looks shit. I didn't necessarily say it looks shit, but I was like $100 basically.
Nice.
And feels good.
Oh, well, it missed. It went to 101, so you're a LARP.
Yep. But yeah, it's like this kind of stuff has been in an uptrend for shit ton, right? Like, this is,
I mean, it literally went like close to parabolic on the daily, right? Like almost the vertical stage. It could still go there, right? If the alt season scenario plays out, I don't know if you can see my shit yet, but I've got like the first actual, like, so I know you hate these levels, but if someone gave me an empty chart and said, where is daily, you know, up here, and said, where is their actual daily structure of some sort, even if it isn't amazing, you've got to take the nearest pre-breakout structure between 100 and 107, and that's kind of what's been retested. It could get retested again or whatever, but if there's going to be any sort of short-term bounce, or at least like nearby levels bounce without looking at weekly timeframes, etc., like around the 100 is where you'd expect that to be. And I think the best resistance on the chart is similarly a pre-breakout cluster at just under 130. So, you know, if altcoins do well, there's a world in which, you know, 100-ish support trading into 130-ish resistance, and, you know, I'm not going to shake a head or shake a whatever. I'm not going to say bad things about a trade like that. It's a pretty reasonable payoff for that. But you know, the of course, the elephant in the room, as we talked about in the newsletter, which is free. I'm not trying to upsell you this via YouTube, is that while this is daily support, we're far away from anything relevant on the weekly, right? And if you're talking like weekly macro pullbacks, etc., that your first port of call is all the way down in the 60s. So, you know, best case scenario is that these daily structures stay intact. The weekly forms some sort of base here and then just continues the leg. And honestly, the daily time frame looks like it could do that. I'm not sure it's convincingly broken trend yet, right? It's kind of just went side a bit steeper. I mean, maybe it's broke. I mean, not really, right? It depends. I think it just about looks okay. If it loses 100, then you will have lost the daily cluster and like some sort of messy version of the uptrend, and then it would look bad. So yeah, AVAX at 100 as far as short-term trading levels, I think is what I've been rambling on about there. And if not, then 60s.
Yeah, it's pretty like the next high time frame level is pretty much like 70.
Yeah,
which is weekly support. In general, I think like if you want to bet on this entire thing kind of continuing, as in Bitcoin just goes back up and altcoins do well, I actually think like the support that you lined out, because you said I'm not sure if you're gonna like it, like the 100 to 110 cluster.
yes,
I think it's actually good. Like this is the perfect shooting block basically for the last leg of a parabola.
yes.
It's just a question of is it going to happen or not, right? And given that the entire market looks kind of shaky, I'm not entirely sure if I would want to play that. But it's a decent, like that's a decent shot, I think.
Yeah.
So like if you bought 100, based on like what we talked about 2 days ago, or what we talked about today, if you can kind of like hindsight trade, whatever.
Exactly.
Then I think it's a decent like shot if you're extremely bullish crypto. If you're not, you probably want to take profit at the first resistance.
And better 100 than 150, right?
Yeah.
Yeah. On the Sol part of things, again, sort of just revisiting some of the ones we talked about. There's an acceptable daily level that we shilled in Technical Roundup at around 194 as far as short-term trading goes. So you see it traded into that level and even spiked that last low, so some sort of bounce is unsurprising. But again, if we're talking weekly structure, bigger, scary-looking pullbacks, then it's got to be this consolidation between, 170, 140-ish, which is this range here. And then if that fails in bear market, and it'll look fucking terrible. But in terms of high time frame, like, okay, the reason I mention high time frame stuff is you get to a point where the market, and I don't know if we're going to get there or when we're going to get there, whatever. I mean, it will eventually. But when the market just fucking falls apart, right? Like nothing is working. You're down 10, 15, 20% for the day. Altcoins are just completely massacred. Spreads are blown out. Funding is negative. Ton of liquidations. And you've got this feeling in your balls that you should be buying stuff. But because you're disorganized, you don't know who, what, where are the high time frame levels? Have you missed the move? Is it at support, etc., etc.? And that's why you prepare in advance, right? You mark out these high time frame levels where maybe you're not expecting price to reach them or spend a lot of time there. But God forbid if everything falls apart and you can go through like a very quick watch list and click through some stuff and know where there's value or severely oversold / discounted stuff, that lets you act quickly enough where you're legit catching 10, 15, 20, 40% wicks just on short-term trades. And that kind of shit can really make up for whatever you lost on the dump itself, unless you're getting liquidated or whatever else. Do you know what I mean?
Yeah, I agree.
Cool. Any final notes? I think we, should let people get along with their weekends at this point.
No, I don't think there's anything really much more to say. I mean, low time frames look like shit. Daily looks like shit. Weekly looks like shit.
Thanks.
Good luck out there.
Should have said less. Look, I posted this Cope daily level, right? This swing low here. Maybe we do a weekend spiky and then something good happens.
Please.
But yeah, this is a weekly stream again, so we're not going to like spend too much time adding commentary on low time frame stuff. It's mostly weekly and monthly structure we're focused on. Follow Don's Twitter for shorter term ish stuff. Don't follow mine; it's garbage. But
mine is even worse.
But that's sort of all we've got. I hope the high time frame stuff makes sense. Make sure to jump back in the video for the summary that we have on Bitcoin and ETH. Also, Technical Roundup comes out. Well, I've got my Monday spaces / stream, Tuesday newsletter, free trletter.com. I'm going to post that in the chat. Go subscribe and read it. The one time we said it makes sense to de-risk until 61 is reclaimed before this nuke, we forgot to share it or shill it. So, our bad on that one. But overall, yeah, let's see where the headlines go, how the market responds. That's another thing. My final note would be if we get more headlines over the weekend, it's worth bearing in mind how the market responds, especially with the S&P 500 being closed. or just US trading, US equities being offline, quote unquote. What you want to see in a market that's strong is bad news get absorbed and good news have positive impact. So if we're going to get headlines like, it's actually not as bad as we think, etc., and the market still shows weakness, that would be unfortunate. Or if it just keeps shitting on meh/bad headlines, that would also not be great. So if we're talking sources of relative strength while the S&P 500 is shut, looking at how Bitcoin responds to some headline risk news stuff is not the worst thing in the world. But that's all from us. Make sure to like the video if you enjoyed any part of it, the summary, maybe the petty grievances at the beginning. God knows I've got many of those. I'm more than happy to do these on the Monday or the Friday session. Thank you to FTX for giving us money while we're losing it in the market. That's very cool. Download the FTX app, best mobile app on the market. You can lend, stake, there's NFT stuff there. You can hide your portfolio, get your family to FOMO the top on Thanksgiving and be down 10% the next day. Lots of good stuff to do there. That's all from us. Subscribe, do all the algo YouTube stuff. Duck, nice to catch up, and we'll see you Monday. Have a nice weekend.
Goodbye.